Hi, I'm GM Wintermute, and in this video we're going to talk about the Fantasy Grounds chat box and how to replace the background image. I'll show you what to look for when selecting that perfect background, and we will discuss how Fantasy Grounds is going to process and tile your image. For this video, I'll be using the Chatbox Checker that will be a part of the next release of my GMW Campaign Toolkit. It's a little utility that I wrote to help ensure that your replacement image will look great in Fantasy Grounds before you even build your first theme. So let's scroll down and click on the Chatbox Checker and open our very first image. As you can see, I've chosen a nice background replacement image. It has a decorative border all the way around it. It's got a lot of space in the middle for, text and dice rolls. So let's take a look at what it's going to look like in Fantasy Grounds. I've already created a theme for it, so I'm just going to make this window smaller so we can compare the two side by side. And in Fantasy Grounds, you can see instantly it's not what we expected it would be. Fantasy Grounds does not shrink or scale your images. It tiles background images for your chat box and for the combat tracker. Understanding how Fantasy Grounds scales certain background images for like the chat box and the combat tracker will make it easier for you to find and choose that perfect background for your chat box. So let's talk about what Fantasy Grounds does to your image and how scaling works. So we're going to head back over here to the Chatbox Checker, and when Fantasy Grounds loads your theme, one of the very first things that it does is it takes your chat box image and it divides it into 9 separate regions, and turning the grid on will show us what those regions are, and they're all named top left, top, all the way down through bottom right. Now some of these regions will tile in a specific way while others are static and don't tile at all. So let's turn on show repeating regions to see what these tileable areas are. And as you can see, there's a nice little color overlay, and the blue regions, the top and bottom, will only tile left to right. The white regions, the middle left and the middle right, tile up and down. The red tiles up, down, left, and right in all directions. And using these regions is how Fantasy Grounds will scale your chat box background. Now that we know what those regions are and where they appear on our image, let's head back over to Fantasy Grounds and take a look at them in action. Now, I made a screenshot of the Chatbox Checker and made it into a theme so you can see exactly what it does look like inside the browser and to better illustrate how the regions will tile. So, first thing we want to do is let's unlock the Chatbox window and let's scroll it out so you can see how your middle repeats only in the middle, and it will repeat in all 4 compass directions. Once again, the top and bottom, the blue regions, will only tile left to right, and the middle regions only tile up and down. So pretty much we know this image is not going to work for the chat box. So let's trash it and move on to image number 2. Going to go back over to the toolkit and open up a new Chatbox Checker and choose image number 2. And when you turn the grid on, you can instantly see that there are 4 areas that we are going to have problems with. And that is the top, the middle left, the middle right, and the bottom down here. They all have some of the decorations that have made it into the region that are going to cause it to tile funny. So let's actually take a look at this image inside of Fantasy Grounds. We'll unlock the chat box and stretch it out so you can see how it does tile the image. Now, that's not a lot, and that is fairly easy to correct. So let's go back over here to the chat box and I did a rough edit on that image and made some changes, and we can compare the two side by side. You can see that I cut the decoration and did a content aware fill just to fill in the areas. Now, what does that look like inside of Fantasy Grounds? As you can see, I've got a little distortion there, but I didn't spend a lot of time on smoothing out the parchment paper. But you can see that we no longer have the artifacts from the borders. So, I could live with this image, and I'm fairly certain that my players could live with this image. So let's move on and take a look at another image. So we're going to head back over to the toolkit, and we are going to open up a new Chatbox Checker and choose our fourth image. And we can turn the grid on this one, and we can see instantly that, oh, this image is going to work out really well inside of Fantasy Grounds. Our repeating edges are all nice and clean. This image will tile beautifully. So let's take a look at it in Fantasy Grounds. And let's unlock the chat box window here, and we'll scroll it around. And as you can see, it does indeed work well. There's a little bit of, issue down here at the bottom with the actual chat entry box, but, I can live with it. Chances are the majority of the players can live with it. So, in my opinion, this is a perfectly acceptable background image for the chat box. It's not perfect, but hey, it's close enough for the amount of Photoshop time I didn't put into it. So, let's head back over to the toolkit and take a look at one more final image. And we're going to open up a new Chatbox Checker and choose our fifth image. This one has a little bit more of a zigzaggy pattern, and we're going to turn the grid on, and you can see that right in, I'll even add the colors, right in here we are going to have just a little bit of a tiling issue. We look good on our top and bottoms, but it's only at the very top and the bottom of the middle left and the middle right that we might have a little bit of an issue. So let's open this up in Fantasy Grounds and see what it looks like. Actually, it worked out really well in this particular case. Initially, you can see just a little bit right there, but that almost looks intentional. We're missing a pixel here and there down there, but once again, this is a great image to work with for the chat box, and it's not just the standard oval frame. Next, we're going to talk about the text area of the chat window and how to check to make sure that the text isn't going to overlap the borders. And to do that, we're going to open up 3 of our sample images, 1, 2, and number 5. And let's arrange them on the desktop so we can see them all side by side. At the top of each Chatbox Checker window, you're going to see a third option called Show Text Region. And clicking that will show you exactly the text area boundaries that Fantasy Grounds is going to use in the chat window in regards to your new background image. And as you can see, the image here on the left has the cleanest text area, very little interference, and that is 100% acceptable in my book, as where the middle and the right image are not going to work out. There's going to be a lot of text overlap, and it's going to make chat rolls and dice rolls and chat messages difficult to read. So just make sure that your text area of your image is clean within this boundary, and you won't have any problem reading it. I hope this video has made it easier to understand how Fantasy Grounds will scale certain background images such as the combat tracker and the chat box. If it hasn't and you still got questions, well, ask them down below or hit me up on the Fantasy Grounds forums. I'm also on Discord. Have a great day.